Papua New Guinea, and welcome to another episode of Business PNG. The PNG Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative report for the year 2013 was launched last week in Port Moresby. The report aims to improve governance in resource-rich countries such as Papua New Guinea through the verification and full publication of company payments and government revenue from oil, gas and mining, with the goal of maintaining transparency.
In March 2014, Papua New Guinea signed up to the International Standard for Promoting Transparency and Accountability in the Oil, Gas and Mineral sectors, known as the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. The EITI is a global standard to promote open and accountable management of natural resources in the extractive sector. Inaugurated by the Prime Minister and the Minister for Treasury on Wednesday, the 30th of March 2016, the PNG Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative Report 2013 seeks to provide better clarity and transparency in the extractive industries.
Our applications to become a candidate of the EITI country was launched in March of 2014. Since then, the process of moving towards our country's first EITI report was led by a multi-stakeholder group consisting of government representatives, civil societies, and of course the industry. The EITI sets out to provide consolidated information on a country's extractive sector in accordance with international standards.
The EITI report contains how much has been paid by the company to the government and likewise how much government has received for that particular financial year. These two sets of figures are then compared and reconciled. If there are any discrepancies in the payments made by companies and revenues received by government, then these raise issues for public debate. The initiative works to build multi-stakeholder partnerships in Papua New Guinea in order to increase the accountability of the government.
There's been a lot of misinformation that has been put into the community by people with vested interest, which are not true. And such reports like this from ETI becomes an important avenue for people to confirm independently what is happening in the industry and what sort of revenue government is getting. I think it is important to also note that this particular initiative is managed with many stakeholders from business community and government working together in producing this report on an annual basis. So it is a very good initiative for Papua New Guinea and brings about a lot of visibility and transparency into what government does in the extractive industry in Papua New Guinea.
Stated in the report, World Bank figures indicate that the extractive industries contributed 0.5 to 5.5% growth in GDP over the reporting period. However, the MRDC could not provide data after 2009, which is of concern given the huge amounts of funds entrusted to them. The state-owned enterprises have been undergoing reforms in recent years. The report points out that IPBC, now known as Kumul Consolidated Holdings Limited, has been described as having a systemic lack of transparency. The report has already highlighted several information gaps and inconsistencies in bookkeeping and payments made in the extractive industry. National Coordinator of PNG Resource Governance Coalition, Martin Namarong, stated that Papua New Guinea risks losing its petroleum license registry because the records are kept in torn, handwritten ledger books, as highlighted in the report.
In terms of governance issues facing Papua New Guinea's extractive industries, there are structural issues, how organizations are structured, staffing, all those things, having the right people there who can collect the data, manage the data. The structural issues that need to be sorted out, so there perhaps need to be reforms in terms of the restructuring of organizations, particularly the regulatory organizations. so that they're able to better regulate the industry. And as I highlighted previously about the issue of production data, we need to get some sort of structures in place in order to have independently verifying the whole production system of our production that's happening in our country.
In 2013, mineral exports accounted for 72.5% of export earnings, according to Bank of Papua New Guinea. The oil, gas and mineral sectors have attracted large-scale investments, particularly the PNG LNG project, which has had major impact on the local economy. The extractive industries continues to be the largest contributor to government coffers. Namarong stated that if Papua New Guineans were to maximize the benefits of resource extraction, they needed access to reliable information, including access to various contractual agreements. Currently, PNG is only a candidate country, but if accepted as an EITI-compliant country, will go further into building a conducive environment and economy based on transparency and increased accountability in the extractive industry.
It is important that people know where their money is going and where their money is coming from. This is an information that is not readily available for people, and people make their own assumptions about revenue collections, and it is important that there's some visibility. So if we need to legislate that, I'm quite happy.
Welcome back. Since the Bank of Papua New Guinea restricted the trading range for the PNG kina and the US dollar in June 2014, the country's business community continues to face foreign exchange shortages and are calling for a relaxation of the enforced trading ban for the kina.
Since the central bank enforced a trading ban in 2014, in which the bank restricted the trading range for the PNG kina and the US dollar in a bid to maintain the falling exchange rate of the kina and avoid depleting its US dollar reserves, concerns have been raised about the lack of foreign currency in the economy, resulting in a problematic backlog estimated to be as high as 3 billion kina, requested by businesses to access foreign currency for imports. The most affected, business houses have called on the national government to float the kina. The impact has affected PNG financial institutions and exporters, as banks continue to see a build-up of foreign exchange orders with very little levels of activity and continued shortages of forex supply, which in turn affects importers. In response, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill says the central bank is attempting to borrow $250 million from the International Monetary Fund to help solve the country's foreign exchange problems. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill said the loan would be used to clear the foreign exchange requests of major fuel and rice companies.
No, we are talking to a range of international financiers and international organizations. But our main focus is to try and to talk with the traditional partners, institutional investors like institutions like IFC and World Bank and IMF and like. We're talking to ADB, which are our traditional lenders to our country. Our aim is to try and make sure that we get the backlog of the currency that is a shortfall that is happening in the country, and central bank is handling that. Discussions are continuing, and we will certainly be addressing it. I have no issues that it'll improve over the medium term. We will get back to normalcy very soon.
The forex market is the backbone of international trade and global investing. It is critical to support imports and exports, which are necessary to gain access to resources and to create additional demand for goods and services. Without the ability to trade in different currencies, companies' prospects would be limited and global economic growth would suffer. This is the concern many industry leaders in the country face since the trade ban was enforced. Michael Kingston, CEO of lead manufacturing company KK Kingston, at an Oxford Business Group panel facilitated by Business PNG, pleaded with the government to float the kina, as his business, as well as other businesses, are tremendously affected by the lack of foreign currency.
But I've got to make one comment on a really important issue that I don't think we've discussed enough, and that's the foreign exchange crisis that's affecting everyone. it's becoming harder and harder for any business to access foreign currency. And this problem is not getting any better. And something has to be done about it. In my opinion, the thing that has to be done is that the kina needs to be refloated. We had a freely floating currency regime in the past, and the government, for reasons that I'm not privy to, made the decision to go back to a managed or a pegged exchange rate. And what that's caused is this massive supply gap between what we demand in terms of US dollars and what's actually supplied. The only way to fix it at this point is to refloat the currency. Now, overnight, that's going to cause a lot of pain. The value of the kina will drop, there's no doubt. And in the short term, there'll be a lot of pain. But in the long term, there'll be a lot more liquidity in the economy. It'll make exports a lot more competitive, whether it's fisheries, agriculture, or anything else. But most importantly, it'll allow business to continue as normal. And right now, it's like trying to run through honey. It's nearly impossible because you just can't get the money to pay your suppliers. So I plead with the government. We have to do something about this foreign exchange crisis.
According to ANZ analyst Glenn Maguire, the prescribed trading ban is constraining the ability of the currency to decline and insulate the economy from falling commodity prices. Only time will tell if a new loan will indeed change this.
Now on to some news bites. Late last week, the national government released the final budget outcome for 2015. The report showed a deficit budget of 2.5 billion kina, which is 5% of GDP. According to the report, the decrease in nominal terms from the 2014 deficit outcome of 2.9 billion or 6.9% of GDP reflects a deliberate intervention by the government to cut down on expenditures and to support continued economic growth with expenditures prioritized towards the medium-term development plan. The final budget deficit outcome for 2015 is also reflective of an intervention by the O'Neill-Dion government to ensure the 2015 budget remains at a prudent deficit level given the significant drop in world commodity prices and subsequently the drop in revenue. The final budget deficit for 2015 compared to the original budget deficit estimate of 2.2 billion kina or 4.5% of GDP is larger by 260.9 million kina. The 4-day APEC Transportation Working Group meeting started Monday in Port Moresby. It is the 42nd meeting of its kind, and Chairman Nick Brown said the meeting's aim is to further the goals of APEC.
Secretary for the Department of Transport Roy Mumu welcomed the delegates. He said PNG, as a diverse and geographically challenged country, recognizes the importance of transportation as an enabler of trade and economic prosperity. Thus, he said PNG looked forward to the outcome of the meetings.
We look forward to this TPDWG 42 to provide the basis and understanding on the best focus areas that PNG can invest in terms of infrastructure developments, financing options, and best practices in relation to aviation, maritime, and land transport.
A short video was shown to highlight PNG's preparations towards hosting the main APEC Leaders Summit in 2018. Chairman Nick Brown said holding such working group meetings was significant for APEC member economies in sharing good practice as well as in experiences for the greater good of the region.
We can pursue common goals, we can work with each other, we can set up projects, we can do research, we can share knowledge, we can capacity build. And all of that activity takes place. Certainly it takes place outside of these meetings, but it really is brought together and given a lot of impetus when there's a series of economies, as a grouping of economies.
This is also the first time for the International Convention Center to be used. It's the venue where over 200 APEC meetings will be held prior to the main summit in 2018.
Lae's Unitech campus will be developed into a town centre that should cater for the growing population of people in the northern part of Lae City and sustain itself as an institution. The university has approached investors in various sectors to fund different development components according to their interests.
Lay's Unitech solely relies on government funding for its operations. Its growth heavily relies on how much money the government allocates annually. This year, the university was asked by the National Executive Council to cut back on funding. The PNG University of Technology's administration is developing a plan to use available campus land to develop a township that will have shops, banks, business activities that will generate revenue for Unitech's long-term operations.
See that in the case of Lay, at the moment there's no modern major shopping centres, whereas in Port Moresby there's 4 now, with Vision City, Waigani Central, the 2 on the waterfront. So there's the potential for a centre of that nature to be developed on the university campus, with cinemas, with grocery and so on. So this is what we see as the opportunity for Unitech in the northern part of Lay.
Paul Walters, the director of Atlas Urban Design and Strategy, has worked on a plan for Unitech, and he says the master plan is designed in a way that will suit interested organizations in all sectors to invest into the area.
Business houses and technology companies, as well as retail, so supermarkets and groceries could also be part of the town centre. A new market is also being planned as part of the master plan. So this is done in a way that invites private investment, that invites business houses to invest in the university campus. And
the plan was presented last week Friday to key players in the private sector and also top-ranking bureaucrats at a dinner hosted by Vice-Chancellor Dr. Albert Schramm. Now, the development will happen in components where interested parties will invest money over time to have infrastructure built. The aim now is to gather momentum behind a plan that will bring revenue to the university and help it develop as well as sustain itself into the future.
Concerns have been raised over the level of support to the autonomous Bougainville government by the national government. President of the Autonomous Region of Bougainville, Chief Dr. John Momis, claimed the actions of the national government, including the withholding of funding to the ABG, was not in line with the Bougainville Peace Agreement, the agreement which formed the basis of the ABG.
A perceived lack of support from the national government has been one aspect that has continued to hamper the efforts of the ABG in effectively carrying out its roles. ABG President Chief Dr. John Momis recently discussed this with National MTV News, saying the current conduct of the national government through its agencies left a lot to be desired.
Yes, I'm somewhat disappointed, and unfortunately this seems to be a trend in the recent past, because the Bougainville Peace Agreement requires compliance with the national government and the compliance with the ABG.
This is not the first time that the ABG has been vocal about its treatment by the national government, which the President says is binding under the Bougainville Peace Agreement.
The two governments must jointly and collaboratively implement the Bougainville Peace Agreement. And the Bougainville Peace Agreement doesn't only deal with the referendum issue, it deals with restoration, it deals with delivery of services post-crisis, and more importantly, it deals with building a new socio-economic political order, which will be culminated once you've had the result of the referendum, either way.
President Momis is optimistic that issues can be resolved in an amicable manner, whether through the joint supervisory body meetings or through direct contact with the national government ministers at the political level.
Politics is about engaging people who may not totally agree with you. So be it, that's okay. But it doesn't stop us from talking, from conducting dialogue, especially with a sense of integrity and honesty.
The 32nd Australia Papua New Guinea Business Forum and Trade Expo will be held next month in Cairns, Australia. This year's theme is Today's Investments, Tomorrow's Returns. The Australia PNG Business Council believes the theme is a reflection of the important stage reached in PNG's economic and social development.
Last year's Australia PNG Business Forum was held in Lae and was attended by 423 participants. This year, over 800 participants are expected at the 32nd Australia PNG Business Forum and Trade Expo, which will be held at the Cairns Convention Centre from the 15th to the 17th of May 2016. The 32nd Forum will again offer opportunity to learn about business opportunities and network with senior Australian and PNG policymakers and business people. Australia is the largest foreign investor in PNG, with investments over many decades totaling around 20 million Australian dollars. Meanwhile, PNG's investments in Australia are increasing. Australia is the primary destination for PNG's exports, largely from the extractive industries. There is more room for expanding the range and destination of PNG's exports, especially in agriculture. Business groups in each country will present to government issues of policy change and administrative action needed to enable bilateral business and investment growth.
And that's all from us tonight. For more business news, or if you would like to view the episode again, visit MTV Online at the URL at the bottom of the screen. Or for up-to-the-minute business news and updates, like our page on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at BusinessPNG or on Tumblr. Until next week, have a pleasant evening. I'm Michelle Bird and this was Business PNG.